Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to use a drill press. We're going to talk about what it's used for, we're going to talk about some of the parts it has, and how to use it safely. The drill press is best used for drilling holes, just as the name might imply. You can drill a wide variety of holes with the drill press. There are all sorts of different drill bits you can use. There's some that look like this. This is called a spade bit. There's some that look like this. This is called a hole saw, or if you need to make really big holes. There's ones like this. This is called a Forstner type drill bit. And there's one that most people are more familiar with, the twist type drill bit like this one. You're going to be using the twist type drill bit. You really don't need to know the different types of drill bits. I was just showing you so you can see all the different things you can do with the drill press. Some parts of the drill press that you're going to need to know. This piece right here is called the feed lever. As you can see, as I turn on the feed lever, the chuck, which is this piece right here, moves up and down. This big flat piece is called the table. That's where you rest your work piece that you're going to be drilling into. Over here is the depth gauge. Here we have an on-off switch, obviously. This right here, this little red switch, turns the laser on and off. I don't recommend using the laser because usually it's not very accurate unless you go through the time to set it up. But I recommend don't use a laser just because generally it's not very accurate. I just like to show you where it's at so that way if you are using the drill press and you flip that on and see what it does and you think it's pretty neat and you want to use it, I still recommend you don't use it because it's not very accurate. A couple other parts of the drill press that you'll need to know. This little piece is called the chuck key. This is what loosens and tightens the chuck, which holds the drill bit. And there are a couple clamps you'll need to know as well. There is a quick grip clamp and then this F clamp or bar clamp, depending upon how you want to name it. These you'll need to use to hold your work onto the table when you do your drilling. One thing a lot of students seem to think is just because the drill press doesn't look as scary as the miter saw or isn't very loud, you don't have to wear safety glasses. You should always wear your safety glasses as soon as you walk into this room. So you definitely need to wear the safety glasses when you're using the drill press. The drill press also will throw quite a bit of wood chips around also. Another good reason to wear your safety glasses. Before you start using the drill press, you should think a little bit about what you need to do to set up your material before you start using the drill press. The first thing you need to do is figure out where you're going to drill a hole and using a scratch awl, which is this tool, make a center punched mark where you want that hole to be. So for example, if I wanted a hole right about here, I'd take my scratch awl, I would line up the scratch awl exactly where I want the hole to be and give it a tap so that way it puts a divot in the wood so that way I know exactly where I want it to go. Another big benefit of doing this is also it gives the drill bit something to follow. As you can see, the drill bit has a nice point on it, most of them do, and with that center punched mark, that drill bit will find that center punched mark and drill the hole exactly where you want it to be. If you don't have that center punched mark, the drill bit might do what's called a walk a little bit, and it might move one way or the other, and your hole might not go exactly where you want it to be. In this class, you do get graded on accuracy, so you want to make sure your drill bit goes exactly where you want it to go, so that way you can get full credit. After you have your block of wood laid out and you're ready to drill your hole, the next step would be to take the drill bit that you need to use and put it into the chuck. To do this, it's best to put about 1 inch of the shank, this piece being the shank on the drill bit, into the chuck. If you do a whole lot more than that, you might not be able to drill a deep enough hole. If you do a whole lot less than that, the chuck won't be able to hang on to the drill bit as well as it really should. So you want about 1 inch of the drill bit shank into the chuck. If you need to go get a ruler to measure this, by all means, go ahead and do that. It doesn't have to be exactly 1 inch, but get it close to being about 1 inch. Take the drill bit, and there are 3 little jaws inside the chuck. You might have to move those in or out depending upon how it was last set up. To move those little jaws in or out, or closer and farther apart, you can turn on this collar of the chuck. So turning it this way is moving the jaws out to make it bigger. Turning it this way is moving the jaws in to make it smaller. So I need to put this drill bit in there, so I'm going to see if I can get it lined up. I need to move the jaws out a little bit and get it started, and then I'm going to tighten it up a little bit. And to start, I'm just going to tighten it up by hand. Then I'm going to take the chuck key and I'm going to tighten the chuck. When I tighten the chuck, I need to be careful I tighten all 3 holes on the chuck. So you can see one there. If I turn it a little more, there's another one. Turn it a little more, there's a third one. You need to tighten all 3 with the chuck key. This way you know for sure the drill bit is nice and tight. If you don't do this, the drill bit might not be tight and problems could result from that. So make sure you tighten up all 3 holes on the chuck. Always make sure you take the chuck key out when you get done tightening up the chuck. It's never a good idea to leave it in there. Right now you can see, for example, it's stuck in there, and if you were to go to turn it on, the chuck key could come flying out of there and hit someone, and obviously we don't want that. So always make sure you take the chuck key out and set it aside when you are ready to drill with the drill press. After you have your board laid out, the drill bit in the chuck, and the chuck tightened up properly, you're ready to place the board on the table and clamp it down where it needs to go. As I said, you need to use some clamps for doing this. You can use a quick grip clamp or an F clamp, bar clamp. Either one of these works just fine. Whichever one you're more comfortable with is fine with me. This one works really simply. You just use this black little lever to loosen it up, and then use this bigger one here to tighten it up. So as you can see, as I squeeze on this one, the 2 jaws get closer and closer together. On this one, it's a little bit different. You need to first adjust it where you want it to go by sliding the orange piece up and moving the jaws together, and then you tighten it up by turning on this knob right here. Then when you're done, to loosen it up, you can loosen this knob up again, and then press on this little silver piece and release it down just like that. I like to use these just because they hold a little bit better, but you can use whichever one that you feel more comfortable with. I'm going to go ahead and get the board clamped down so that way when we're ready we can drill a hole in this board so you can see what that looks like. When you go to clamp your material to the table, always make sure you put the tails of the clamps pointing down like this one, not up like this one. Even if it's not in the way of the feed lever, which sometimes it's not, it still can get in your way and just cause some problems. Even right now, it looks like it might be out of the way, but it still hits the lever, or the lever still hits the handle right there. So always make sure you put these tails down, not up. Also notice how I'm using 2 clamps, not just 1. It's always a good idea to use 2 clamps when you're clamping material down. 1 just usually isn't enough. So always make sure you use 2 clamps when you're clamping your material to the table. When you are finally ready to start drilling, obviously you'll hit start and then start moving the feed lever to drill your hole. When you're ready for this, do not stand over here to drill your hole and try to reach around like this. That would not be a good idea. The couple good places to stand would be directly in front of the drill press, or maybe over here on the side of the drill press. That way you're free and clear of the chuck. This whole assembly will spin. So if you're reaching around the drill press when you're on that side, your clothes could get caught up in the chuck, and obviously that would not be very good. So always make sure you're standing completely clear of the chuck, so that way when you do turn it on and it is running, you can stand away from it and drill your hole safely. Also, before you turn on the drill press, make sure there's nothing on the table. Right now I have a scratch all another drill bit on here. Obviously that would not be safe. You want to make sure those are off the table before you start drilling. What could happen is if the clamps fail and the piece of work gets grabbed and starts to spin, if these pieces are on there, they could get knocked off and thrown around the room, and we don't want that. So always make sure the table is completely clear of anything that doesn't need to be there. The board, the 2 clamps obviously need to be there, but anything else can come off. If your work does get grabbed by the drill bit and starts to spin, you have a couple options. If it's a longer piece like this, it's probably not going to go far. It's probably just going to hit this column and stop, maybe even break the drill bit off, and it's not that big of a deal. If it's a short piece, it might sit there and spin. The best thing to do if that occurs, just reach up and hit the off button. When you are drilling a deep hole, like a piece like this that's 1.5 inches thick, it's always a really good idea to go in a little bit, out, in a little more, out, in a little more, and out, and keep repeating that until you get all the way through your material. Reason why you want to do this is to clear out the wood chips. Every time you do this, it removes some of the wood chips from the hole, and if those wood chips stay in there, they can get bound up and they can start to produce excess heat, and that heat can ruin the drill bit. So you always want to make sure you go in, then back out, in a little more, back out, in a little more, back out, and so on. When you are done drilling, do not let the handle snap back. It is spring loaded, so if I were to drill and, for example, let it go, it could go all the way back, but please don't do that. Just let it come back nice and gently. When you are done drilling the hole, you should be aware that the drill bit can get hot enough to burn you. It can get really warm. Just like when you take your hands and rub them together and starts to build up friction, you can start to feel heat build up. Same thing happens here, only a lot faster. You have the drill bit rubbing on the sides of the wood that you're drilling into, and it can build up a lot of heat. If the drill bit is dull, I actually have seen it where things can get so hot that the wood can start to smoke. So you always want to make sure that you are aware the drill bit can get really hot after you are done drilling. That is how to use a drill press. If you need to watch this again, please do. If you need to relearn anything, please do. Otherwise, if you have any questions, let me know and I'll be happy to answer them.